Thank you for listening to this episode.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @PrestigiouSPod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Beane, @ChrisBeaneOfficial, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousInitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Beane. Today I have a truly special guest joining me, Kute Blackson. He's a transformational speaker, the best-selling author of You.Are.The.One and The Magic of Surrender, recognized by Inc. magazine as the mindfulness guru that billionaires go to for advice. Kute has been featured on platforms like Larry King Now, Fox and Friends, Dr. Drew. And today we're going to be diving into the concept of surrender and how embracing it can lead to profound growth for personal and fulfillment. Kute, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Kute, why would somebody like to listen to our conversation here today?
I would say if they want to experience freedom on all levels, freedom in mind, freedom in body, freedom in spirit, freedom in relationships. I think ultimately we're all seeking freedom in many ways, but we're chasing it through dead-end paths that don't lead to more freedom, but often lead to more stress, limitation, and anxiety. And so if you want to experience more freedom, I would say this is going to be the show.
Very good. And what do you think it is about freedom that people are continually they're seeking this, they're chasing it, but we can't find it? Is it that we don't understand the meaning, we don't know how to get there, our definition is wrong? What do you think that is?
I would say that we're seeking a sense of freedom outside of ourselves. And so we're looking in things like alcohol, we're looking in relationships, we're looking simply at material acquisition to try to fulfill something deeper. And none of those things ultimately bring us true freedom. Freedom is really an inner state of being. And when your sense of freedom or happiness is dependent on circumstance, when your sense of inner freedom, happiness, joy, peace is dependent on external factors, you'll experience a lot of limitation. I would say you have a very conditional relationship with life. And many times what we end up doing as human beings is we seek to arrange our world, arrange our relationships, arrange our life, and everything needs to be perfectly synchronized and coordinated and arranged in order for us to be happy. But the truth is, when we look at life, how often does everything go the way we want? When we look at life, how often does everything align? When we look at life, how often does everything fit into an exact position of what we imagine? And so when we depend on life being a certain way, then we often suffer. And so there's so much in life as human beings that we cannot control. You cannot control the weather. You cannot control the president. You cannot control your cat, your pet, your children, really. You cannot control the neighbors. You cannot control how someone is going to drive. You cannot control the traffic. You cannot control if there's a wildfire. You cannot control the stock market. You cannot control so many things. But the only person that we can really control is ourselves, in terms of who we're going to be, in terms of our own focus, in terms of the meanings that we choose to make things mean. And so the more we are, I would say, conditional, where we need things to be a certain way in order for us to be happy, and spend our lives fixating, focusing on controlling the external environments to be that way, the more we will suffer. And so true freedom is an inner state of being, where I think you can choose how you're going to respond to life, and choose how you're going to respond to circumstance, and choose how you're going to respond to things, instead of reacting and being dependent on things being a certain way. Not that it's not nice to have things be a certain way. Not that it's not nice to go to a nice restaurant and, choose your vacation and, have your stocks go well. Not that it's a beautiful thing, but it's just that when you're depending on these things and your sense of happiness is dependent on these things, when you're depending on your husband or your wife to validate you all the time and you can't really function without them, then you become codependent and you're not free. And not that it's not nice that your wife or your spouse doesn't say, hey, honey, you look beautiful today. But if you need that in order to be happy, then you experience no freedom. You contract, you collapse, you suffer. And so I think freedom is what it's about. When you look at someone like a Mandela, right? I think the reason we really respect people like the Mandelas of the world, 27 years in prison, and he could have come out angry and frustrated and mad at the world. And I mean, imagine 27 years in prison. That's enough time to suffer, right? And it's brutal. And yet somehow he refused to allow this jail cell to define him. And most of us, even though we're living in a free world, whether it's the US or wherever wherever we live, um, most of us were living in a prison of our minds, a prison of our conditioning, a prison of our own belief systems about life in the world. And so we allow experiences and events to determine who we're going to be and how we feel. We allow experiences and events to determine what things mean. But the truth is, if you want to be truly free, I think we have to take the responsibility to realize that events and experiences and circumstance don't really have meaning. What has meaning is the meaning that we choose to give things, which is why even in the midst of, let's say, a recession, one person can feel depressed and anxious and stressed and jump off a cliff and commit suicide. Warren Buffett, on the other hand, or someone else, is excited because they see the possibilities and opportunities. So freedom is an inner state of being. And I think that's what we have to take responsibility to find. And that's why I say freedom.
And we live so much and we focus so much on the outer world, and we're trying
Yes.
to control and structure and change these things on the outer world, but we do little on the inner world. And those
Yeah.
are the things where we actually have impact on. Those are things we actually can control and change and modify. The outer world is there. Yes, it is important, but we can control what we see and how we perceive those events based on the inner side of those. That's like the Stoics say, if it's raining out, okay, you can't be mad that it's raining. It
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
it is or it isn't. Okay, great. You don't have any effect on that. You being upset about that doesn't change any of that. So having an internal reflection, having an opportunity to see from the inside, how does this affect me? How does me being upset or happy or joyful, whatever it is, affect the external? And that's the way to look at that, is start from the inside and then to the outside. And that's where the freedom will come from.
Yeah. Yeah. Freedom is an inner state of being. And I think when we really decide to become, it's not immediate, but when we really decide to become unconditional in life, then we begin the path of awakening our experience of freedom. And so I would invite people to look at, well, what things in your life are you allowing to determine your inner freedom, your joy, your happiness, right? And just start to question and start to look at why, and look at when, and look at how. Because ultimately, when we are living conditionally, where we need things to be a certain way, we need our spouse to be a certain way, we need the president to be a certain way, we need the government to be a certain way, then you could say, effectively become victims. And when we are, whether we see ourselves that way or not, we become victims. And when we are in a victim stance, we are not free, we are not empowered, we are not in control in a certain sense. And so on some level, the paradox is you have to give up control to actually find the control. You have to give up the control to realize all the things that are not in your control, to be able to find what you are in control of over. And that's who we're going to be, and that's how we show up. And that is the power that we have. And so I think when we do that, we realize that none of us, we are not victims. Life happens, stuff happens, things happen, which we don't control, which we can't control, but we can always choose what we are going to make things mean in any given moment. And that is the power, that is the mastery, that is the freedom, that is the control that we have.
Okay, so Coop, I'm going to talk a little bit about your backstory, your
Sure.
background. You have incredibly diverse background, experiences spanning multiple different continents and cultures. You grew up in your father's church. You were on the stage speaking at 8 years old. You're ordained as a minister at what, 13 or 14 at a young age.
Mhm.
How has all of this multicultural background, your upbringing, influenced your approach to personal development and transformation?
Wow, it's a big question, my friend.
Mm,
Yeah, my father's from Ghana, my mother's Japanese. I grew up in London. And so for me, as a young boy, I didn't grow up with a sense of feeling like I belonged anywhere. I didn't grow up with a sense of like, oh, I'm British, right? Or I'm black, or I'm African, or I'm Japanese. And then at 18, I came to the US by myself and probably lived in the US most of my life now. And so growing up without feeling like I belonged made me from a very young age start questioning, where am I from? Where is home? Who am I? If I'm not black, if I'm not Japanese, if I'm not Asian, if I'm not British, if I'm not white, if I'm not like, who am I? Right. And I think that took me down a very deep path of inquiry in terms of on a spiritual level to question my identity and myself. And as I began to question, I really began to feel as though, from my own inner experience, that what I am is a spirit, what I am is consciousness, what I am is energy, what I am is a soul, what I am is just pure beingness, so to speak. And because the soul doesn't have a passport, if you cut a Jewish person's heart open or brain open, you won't see a Jewish heart. You cut a black person's heart open, you're going to see a black heart, an Asian heart. It's just we all bleed the same, we all breathe the same. We are at the deepest level one. And I think so the multicultural background for me, the blessing was, even though as a child it was a bit difficult because I really didn't feel like I belonged, it forced me to dig inside. And in that kind of awakening, I began to realize we're all one at the deepest level. Uh, we are all connected at the deepest level. We all want the same things at the deepest level. And when I began to travel to Ghana, even as a young man, and see some of the poverty there, then I began to travel to Japan with my mother in the opposite sort of extreme of prosperity and technology and advanced first world. At the end of the day, even though things look different and people look different and we all look different and seem different, I saw that we are more alike than we are different. At the deepest level, we all want the same things. We all want to know that our lives matter. We all want to know that we are loved. We all want to know that our children are healthy and that we can take care of ourselves. And I mean, we all really want the same things, even though some of the surface level expressions are different. And so for me, the blessing was it made me at a very young age focus on the deeper interconnectedness of humanity. And I think in our world today, we have forgotten that and we've become more focused on all of the ways that we are different and we are separate and black and white and green and orange and east and west. And the truth is, it's all nonsense. You know,
mm.
what nationality is the soul, right? What passport does the soul have? And so for me, that became my deep realization at a young age, and it really informed me because I began to see that we are one. We are one consciousness, one humanity. Maybe expressing in different ways, but that became my focus and a blessing.
Okay, so that's interesting to me because so right now I'm doing a book study on Carl Jung's Red Book, where he's going through his subconscious. And in his subconscious, he talks about the subconscious as a collective subconscious. It's all interconnected. We
Uh-huh.
all have the same, we all share the same, that primal knowledge that is there for everybody. But until we can access that, we can't connect ourselves. We can't move the subconscious and conscious into one part of us. We stay as two separate parts. And we know from scientific brain studies that they've done where they can access the
Yeah.
subconscious and speak to it. It speaks in a wildly different personality, different ways of
Mm.
speaking than what the conscious brain thinks of and speaks in, even in the same person. So the concept of being one and being all interconnected is really interesting for me. And I guess as you're talking about surrender, as we're
Mhm.
moving into the magic of surrender, how do you view that and moving away from a passive type of surrender where you're surrendering and you're giving up control into a way that surrender is meaningful? And I
Mhm.
guess maybe the underlying question is how do you define surrender? Well, maybe we'll start with that question before we move to the next one.
Yeah, I
What
think,
is
look,
surrender?
in our culture today, we have this very limited misconception that surrender is weak, that surrender is passive, that surrender means giving up, that surrender is waving the white flag, that if you surrender, you're going to be a homeless person and you're going to have to give up all of your hopes, your dreams, your desires. That if you surrender, you won't manifest your dreams and desires and you're going to lose your motivation somehow, or you're going to have to renounce everything and be a monk in a in a monastery in the Himalayas or somewhere in the mountains. And I think it's a very limited definition that if you surrender, somehow we think that we will get less in life. And I'm actually posing the possibility and the invitation to realize that what if everything you knew about surrender was off, was wrong, was mistaken? That what if you didn't get less, but what if you actually got more? More than you could have imagined with the limitedness of your own conscious human ego, with the limitedness of your personality, with the limitation of your mind and who you think you are, your current identity. What if you got more? What if it was better than you could think about? What if it was beyond? What if it was more magnificent? Maybe not what you thought, maybe still different, but what if it was better? And I think if we all really, at least when I look at my life, and I look at the best things that have happened in my life, meeting my wife, having my son, buying a house, all of, I mean, I could bore you with 4 podcast episodes of all the incredible things that have happened in my life that I did not plan, that was better than I could have even imagined. Then I am left there in awe saying, I could not have even imagined this for myself, right? So we have this very limited concept of surrender. And so to start that conversation, yes, surrender is a letting go of control, right? But I would say it's a letting go of the illusion of control because we think we're in control, but we're really not. Because the truth is, I'm not sure where you were born, but I was born in Ghana and I was supposed to grow up in Ghana. And yet there was a coup that killed the president. My father was very close to the president. So we had to flee the country and ended up in London unexpectedly, unintentionally, not planned. And I think to myself, wow, I'm so magnificent, I'm in control. But the truth is, had I grown up in Ghana, my life would be very different. And so you are partly, and we are partly where we are because not of decisions that we made, but decisions that our grandparents made and our ancestors made and our great grandparents made. And so how much of that was in our control, really? Because your life and my life would be different if our ancestors or our grandparents made a decision to live in Afghanistan, right? And so part of surrender is a letting go of control. And it's a letting go of the illusion of control because there's so many things, as we started the conversation saying, that we are actually not in control of. We can't control the president. We can't control Elon Musk. We can't control the weather. We can't control the snow. It's just impossible. And part of human suffering comes because we are fixated on trying to control all the things that are actually out of our control. Then we feel helpless and then we suffer. And then we feel anxious and we feel stressed. We try to control our goldfish, our friend, our child, how we're perceived. I can't really control how I'm perceived. I can just be myself and people are going to have their opinions on me and that's my reputation. But what I do have control over is my character and who I'm going to be, the choices I'm going to make, and really making peace with who I am, even when no one is looking. And so surrender is letting go of control. Surrender is letting go of the idea of who I think I should be and how I think my life should be. Because many times we have this preconceived idea of how we think life should be and how we think we're going to be and how we think it's going to play out. And we make all of these plans, we get attached to these plans, and then we end up suffering. And the truth is, how many of those plans actually came to reality? How many of the things you planned when you were 18, when you were 22, when you were 25, went and your life went exactly according to plan? If it did, you're probably living a very boring life. But the truth is, we have all these plans and life has a whole other plan. And either we can surrender to that and go with that, or we resist it and suffer. And so surrender is a letting go of the limited idea of how we think things should be, how we think people should be, who we think we should be, so that we can, shall we say, open to life, open to what life shows us, open to what the universe shows us, open to what, for some people, God might show you. And I think when we can be open and available and receptive, then what that sets up is living more in sync with life and living more in the flow. And I think that's when we can live more harmoniously, experience more joy. And so let's look at it this way. The old paradigm of, shall we say, personal growth, I call it the old paradigm, even though it's still present, is make your life happen. Like, know what you want and go for it and make that shit happen in your life, which is great. Don't get me wrong. It's good to know what you want, and it's good to apply yourself and put in your effort and your self-agency, which is magnificent. But many times you might get what you thought you wanted, right? Only to realize that when you achieve it, what you thought you wanted was not what you really wanted. It was just what you thought you wanted based on who you thought you were. Oh, I thought I wanted to be famous. I thought I wanted that Oscar. I thought I wanted that girl. I thought I wanted a Lamborghini. And then you achieve it. It's like, is this all? Because often we are setting goals based on a limited sense of who we actually think we are, because we're conditioned. And many times our goals are reactions. We're not conscious. Our goals are reactions to pain and trauma and hurt. Dad wasn't around. I felt not enough. So you know what? I got bullied in school. So, hey, I'm going to show everyone that I am lovable and enough, and I'm going to achieve, and I'm going to succeed. I'm going to get the Ferrari, the Lamborghini, the big house, and like, screw everybody. I'm enough. And you might achieve it. The pain motivates you, but I promise you, it will not fulfill you. And so a life, what I have found is a life that is created from the ego alone, purely, is limited, because the ego, which is, and we can get further into that as we go along, but the ego is the limited sense of self that we have been conditioned to believe that we are, based on our beliefs, based on our thoughts, based on our memories, based on our history, that we identify with, and we hold on to that. And that creates a very limited sense of identity and perception. And so when we're locked in ego, we are not able to see the grand scheme of things. We're not able to look from a bird's eye vision. That's why many times when things don't go according to plan and when things don't happen the way we want it to, we're distraught, we're miserable, we suffer, we're unhappy, we don't feel free. But maybe 10 years later, with some perspective, we gain wisdom, we gain understanding, because our identity has expanded and we're able to say, oh, that was a blessing. Oh, I'm so glad the relationship, the business, the thing that I wanted didn't happen, because now we've expanded our sense of self. We've matured, so to speak. And so the old paradigm is an ego-based model for living life. But I would say when you're living this idea of surrender in an empowered way, right? The question is not, what do I want? This limited sense of I. The question becomes an expanded question. The question becomes, what is it that life is seeking to express through me? This intelligent life. Some might say God, some might say the universe. I don't really care what you call it. But what is it that life is seeking to express through me? And it's about having the courage to just take a moment to be still, to be silent, to feel the deepest, the deepest, most authentic impulse or expression from within you, and to follow that. But now you're operating in alignment with what is true and what is authentic, not just what you think you should be doing or think you should have. And so it's about surrendering to what's true, surrendering to what's authentic. And the reason it's not passive is because when you do that, then I'm saying give 100%. Give 100%. And so surrender is not just, well, let me just, sit down and wait for the inspiration to strike me. Let me sit down and let God do it. No, you feel what is most true and you fully commit to it. That is surrender. And sometimes what you will be guided to do will not be what your ego wants to do. Right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes what we know we need to do, let's take it on a micro level, which is get yourself out of bed and exercise, right? you won't feel like it. So people think, oh, well, I'm just going to surrender to the flow of staying in bed and not exercising today. That is not surrender. That is laziness, right? That is just, I'm just going to surrender to snorting some cocaine because but that's just following a biological addiction and urge. True surrender is when you feel the deeper commitment, the deeper sense of what you are committed to. Maybe it's making an impact. Maybe it's writing that book. Maybe it's, being in a committed relationship with your wife. These things aren't necessarily easy. Exercising every day. These things aren't always easy. But if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And so true surrender is feeling that deeper commitment and surrendering to that and not just allowing the fleeting superficial mood of the moment to determine your actions and who you're going to be and what you're going to do. The last thing I'll say is, this is why I say this statement. The deeper I go, the more I evolve as a human being on my spiritual path. What I have found is the deeper I have gone, the less choice I have, the freer I am. The more in ego I am, the less choice I think I have, the more limited I am. Because the deeper you go and the more you connect with your authentic self, the things that you used to be able to do, hang out with those people, sleep with that girl, drink that thing, smoke that this, do that, gossiping, blah, those things you used to be able to do, the deeper you go, the more you get into alignment with your true self, the less you can do them. So on one level, the deeper you go, the less choice you have, the freer you are, right? And so it's like even with to make it practical, like with exercise. I made exercise because I feel the impact and the benefit in my life and how it frees me up to have more energy to be able to serve people and serve the world and do my events. I made exercise non-negotiable. I made it a choice to not be a choice. And that choicelessness of exercise is the deeper freedom. So it's no longer a choice. Look, I could wake up at 2 a.m., I'm going to exercise. I may not feel like it, be in the mood, I'm going to exercise. So now it's a choice that is no longer a choice. There's a deeper freedom. And so I have surrendered to exercise. I've surrendered. So many of us, rather than surrendering, we're negotiating with many of us. We know what we need to do. We know what we are here to do. We know what our soul is calling us to do, but we don't do it. We resist out of fear, out of resistance, out of comfort, out of familiarity. And so true surrender is an complete acceptance of the deeper calling of our heart and the willingness to commit to it and follow it. That's why it's not just a passive thing where you sit at home.
Okay, so that definition of surrender kind of speaks to me like Bruce Lee's be like water. You want to flow.
Yeah.
You put water into a teapot, it becomes a teapot. To be like water, to flow through, to allow life to happen to you. And then like the other part is you want to have an opportunity to turn the self-edit part of your brain off. And so you have that feeling, that thing that you think, oh, maybe I should do this. And then you have that self-edit part of your brain that says, nah, that's not you. And really, that's the ego speaking to you and quieting and squashing those beliefs that are connecting you to be the person who you can be when you align yourself to that core version of yourself. If you can learn to turn the ego off and to resist the urge to self-edit when those ideas, when those opportunities arise, and you take them, you flow to them, you be like water, you move in the direction that life is guiding you into, then you can surrender in such a way that will align yourself to be the type of person who you want to be. And when you're not trying to live somebody else's life, when you're trying to live your own life, and you're not trying to live the life of the examples that are set to you, you're not that person. You can't live that example type of life. You have to live your own life. And until you decide to make an opportunity to change, a conscious choice to change and to live your own life, the freedom isn't there because you cannot be yourself. You're always self-editing. You're always in a way that prevents you from being those things. But until you can turn off that self-edit and be true to yourself and to live in freedom and to flow into the areas and ideas that arise to you in the times and moments that they arise, you take those choices, you take those opportunities, you go through that door that opens. Then you can align to be the person who you want to be, who the universe or God or whoever it is wants you to be.
Yeah. I think surrender is so when you feel what's true and you take the door and you move in. The key thing is you move in the direction of what you are called. And the key element of surrender too is as you move in the direction, you give 100% without attachment to the outcome. Many times we get so attached to the thing, to the goal, to the dream, and to the outcome. And that creates suffering. I'm saying take action, give 100%, but just don't get attached to the outcome. Because sometimes if you're going to get attached to anything, get attached to the journey and get attached to the lesson. Because sometimes the thing that you think is the thing is really not the thing. It's just taking you on a journey. It's taking you on a journey to grow and evolve so that you can learn the lesson, so that you can become the person that is actually capable of fulfilling that goal and dream. And this is why I also say, often when your dreams or your goals don't work out, it's often a blessing. It's grace. You're just not able to see it right now. And so I think when we are more committed to the process versus the outcome, then we are willing to surrender. But often we're so attached to, no, this person that I'm dating has to be the one. Like, I'm going to make you the one. Yeah, but you can't force something to be something that it's not. Actually, there's about three or four reasons why things don't manifest. Number one, the thing that you're trying to make happen or trying to manifest, the goal is not actually the goal. The goal is not truly in alignment with your soul's highest intention. And so things don't quite align in the universe. And what we tend to do in that moment is we force it. We apply more force. But this takes us in the wrong direction further, creates more suffering. So if things are consistently not manifesting, step back, reevaluate, reconnect, re-envision, and feel what's true. And maybe you'll sense a deeper truth, a deeper goal, a deeper something. Second reason why things sometimes don't manifest is timing. It's just not the right time yet. Like, there's a season for everything. There's a season for the winter. There's a season for spring and autumn and summer. And many times we are trying to go to the beach in the winter, right? And in the summer, we're trying to ski. Sometimes it's time to rest. But when it's time to rest, we're running around like a headless chicken because we're afraid that nothing's going to get done unless we take action. And then when it's time to take action, we're so exhausted that we want to rest because we're out of sync with the flow and the nature and the harmony and the rhythm of life. And so sometimes things don't manifest because it actually isn't time yet. So we have to learn to trust the timing of things and understand the timing of things. There's a time to flow. There's a time to act. There's a time to rejuvenate. There's a time to rest. For some people, it might be a time to get married. For some people, it might be a time to be single. And so trust the timing of your life and work with the timing of your life. Some people might call it being in the flow or trusting divine timing. The third reason I think that things don't manifest that I have found, I come from the perspective that we are all souls. We are souls. Doesn't matter what religion you are. We are just souls. We incarnate into this human experience. Metaphorically, the way I see life is like a university for your soul's growth and evolution. So essentially, we are here to learn. We are here to grow. We are here to evolve. Everything and everyone is your teacher, and school is always in session. If that's the case, and life is about growth and learning, sometimes things don't manifest because you have not learned the lessons that your soul is needing to learn where you are with who you're with. And all lessons are repeated until learned. So when people say to me, like, why do I keep attracting the same person in relationship over and over again? Why do I keep attracting the same experience over and over again? Because likely you have not learned the lesson where you are right now with who you're with. And what I have found is when you learn the lesson in life that life is presenting you, because life is full of lessons, when you learn the lessons, that learning of the lessons is what will help you graduate to the next level of this simulation of life, this next level of the video game. And so it's like you can't get into university unless you pass high school. You can't get into the PhD, the master's program unless you do your undergrad. You can't get into the PhD program till you do your master's. And so I think life is a progressive, evolutionary process of learning and growth and becoming more of who we really are. And so I think things sometimes don't manifest until we learn the lessons where we are with who we're with. And when we do, that's what unlocks the key to the next level of our life.
Well, and often we think life is going to go a certain way. We have this plan, this thing that we want to have happen, and when it doesn't happen, we either dwell on the negativity and live in the
Yeah,
negativity for however long until we climb out of that hole that we dug for ourselves. But if we can see the opportunities that arise from those things, I know for myself, I have had some of the biggest opportunities for growth, and some of the biggest growth has happened out of the shortcomings that I have faced for myself.
for
And
sure.
I think that is a way that our life is well, it's like we're going to school. It's our
Mm,
soul learning that information that we need in order to make it to that next level. We have to go through that failure in order to make it to the other side. Anytime we learn something, learning is a byproduct of failure. We have to first fail at something in order
mhm.
for us to truly learn how
Yeah.
to make sure that thing doesn't happen again. But if we only see
Mhm.
failure as a negative thing, if we only encounter failure and experience and think about it in a negative way, we won't be able to move past that negativity into growth. And that failure is where growth stems from. Failure is the byproduct, and it is a growth is a byproduct of failure. We have to go through that failure in order to experience the growth. But if we don't see it, if we don't have the opportunity to flow, if we don't have the opportunity to turn off that
Yeah.
auto edit of our brain and access whatever that position is that life is trying to flow us into so that we can learn and become a better version of ourselves, we just stay in the negativity, then we miss out on that. Then we don't
Yes.
have that opportunity to surrender to the things that are happening for us in life so that
Exactly.
we can become a truer, better aligned version with our core self.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Many times we are trying to manifest peanuts in our lives
Mm,
because we think, because that's all we can see from our current perspective, right? We're,
mm,
we're, we're locked in this person and we're like, no, I really want this. It's got to be this. It's got to look like this. And it's peanuts. We think the peanut is everything because that's all we can see when the universe is trying to give us a whole peanut factory, And so in many ways, surrender is taking the limitations off of life and saying, I am fully available. I am fully open. I'm fully receptive. And that is when the magic happens. The reason I call my book The Magic of Surrender, not the power of surrender or the wisdom of surrender, is because magic is that which is beyond our ego's capacity to see what's possible. It's beyond. It's miraculous. It's the amazing. We all want that, but we don't want to surrender. And the code is if you want more magic, you have to surrender. And the degree of magic you experience in your life is in direct proportion with the degree of your surrender. And if you look at any of the truly, let's say, great people in life, people that accomplished, love them or hate them, people that accomplished, people that achieved, people that inspired, a Gandhi, a Bruce Lee, right? A Mother Teresa. Like if anyone thinks surrender was weak, just listen to
mm,
Bruce Lee talk about be like water. Like that dude was no nonsense. And
mm,
he was effectively talking about surrender without
mhm,
saying the word surrender when in his be like water conversations. And so when you look at people like a Bruce Lee, a Muhammad Ali, a Gandhi, a Mother Teresa, any of the greats, an Oprah in their own way, at some point, whether they were conscious or not, they all reached the point of life where they had to surrender the idea of what they thought their life would be. They had to surrender themselves to life. And in that surrender, they transcended their human limitations.
mm,
And I think that's when life began to use them. God began to use them. Their souls got activated because Martin Luther King. He didn't want to be the leader of the civil rights movement. They asked him, and he said no. And eventually, he surrendered, and he said yes. Gandhi was a successful lawyer going down a particular path, and he had to come to the realization of, wow, if I follow my soul, I'm going to have to give up who I've been and go down a whole different trajectory. What if he didn't? Look at Mandela, 27 years in prison. This is a life that you can never script. You
mm,
could never sit down and let's say do a goal setting session and say, I'm going to spend 27 years in prison. After 27 years, I'm going to come out and be the president of South Africa and become an iconic. Can't plan that. It only happens when you surrender and life takes over. He was still showing up, doing his part, applying his effort. But in the surrender, you transcend your human limitations and tap into the infinite possibilities of life. And this is when the magic happens. You go beyond your limited ego and you tap into something more. And that's the grace.
Okay, so then how can you move past the ego and the conscious way of thinking in order to get to a truer, better, primer version of yourself, in order to access that, to commune, to understand the direction that your life needs to go in? How do we surrender
Yeah.
in order to gain that knowledge for
Yeah.
ourselves?
First, I think it's important, to just understand what we've talked about, which is just a different paradigm of what surrender is. Because if you don't understand that, then you won't want to surrender, because you have this perception that surrender is bad and it's negative. And it's not. It is. Okay, before I even answer your question, I'd like everyone to remember your most blissful sexual experience. We've all had a beautiful sexual encounter, if you remember your most beautiful sexual experience, what made it beautiful? What made it so blissful? Was it because you came to the encounter with your lover, your wife, your husband, spouse, whoever, and you had an entire notepad and a business plan of how this encounter for the next hour and 44 minutes and 33 seconds was going to go? And you had it all scripted out. Okay, honey, firstly, this is what you're going to do. And minute 1 and 37 seconds, you're going to lie down and kiss me 17 times. And that's not why it was blissful. The reason it was blissful, right, is because you didn't plan. Did you know what was going to happen in that encounter? Did you know what would happen 10 minutes later? The reason the love making was so blissful is because you didn't plan it. You didn't try to control it. You let go. You dissolve. You transcended yourself. And anyone that's had a blissful sexual encounter will always say it was transcendent, right? It was a transcendental experience because you truly let go of control and you surrendered yourself and you became one. And so if lovemaking is that way, life, I'm saying, is that way. And the reason it was so blissful is because you surrendered. And I think when we live more that way, right? We live more that way, then we're in the flow of life. And that's truly the bliss. So what is it that resists surrender? What resists surrender is the ego. The ego is that version of ourselves that we have mistakenly believed ourselves to be, that we attach to. And the ego is made up of the past, memories, thoughts, feelings, belief systems that we identify with and we hold onto so tightly that gives us a sense of control. And the degree to which we identify with the ego and hold onto it is the degree to which we are not free, the degree to which we will tend to resist surrender, because we deeply believe ourselves to be the ego, our beliefs, our thoughts. But even though you believe yourself to be these set of beliefs and ideas, how many of us, you do not believe the things you believed 10 years ago? There are beliefs that you have now. There's beliefs that you had when you were 12 that 20 years later you don't believe. You don't believe in Santa Claus anymore. You don't believe in the tooth fairy anymore, but you believed it. But many of us were believing things about life and things about ourselves. I'm unworthy. I'm not enough. I'm this kind of person. I'm that kind of person. I'm not this kind of person. And we believe it so strongly that it has become a stranglehold and a prison that we hold on to. And that becomes an identity. And the more we believe ourselves to be that ego, the more we are afraid of surrendering. Because for the ego, surrender feels like a death. So we have to understand what the ego is. The ego is a construct. The ego is not even real. The ego is a process of identification, identifying with mind, body, name, form, culture, etc., all those things we've been told, the things that have happened, stories we've made up. Ego is a construct. Ego is a process of identification. And when we can understand what the ego is and isn't, because the ego thinks if I surrender, I am going to die. But when we understand and realize, oh, I am not the ego, then we realize that in the letting go of the belief or the idea or the limited concept about ourselves, oh, I'm not going to die. The illusion of what I thought I was is going to die. And that's what needs to be surrendered. You see, just to back up to maybe give people a bit more understanding. When we're born, we are born free. A little child is free. I have a 21-month-old son, and he's just free. Just like will run, if he meets you right now, he'll come up to you and look at you and maybe give you a hug. Like he doesn't have all of these preconceived ideas. Oh, there's a dude, he's got glasses, he's got brown hair, and this means that, and that means that, and da. There's nothing. There's just blank. There's just pure beingness, right? We were all like that once. We would jump on the table and sing. My son just jumps on the table. He sings. He dances. He doesn't care how he sings. He doesn't care that he doesn't sound like Bruno Mars. So he'll run naked through the house. He's not like, oh, what do I look like on Instagram? I'm a little chubby today. He's just being. We were all that free once. So what happened? So we were all in touch with the pureness of our beingness. You could say the light, the divinity. So we were born. We met our parents. God bless our parents. They were just doing the best that they knew how to do based on their childhood and their upbringing and their parents and their grandparents. So we were all born into like a preset pattern of pain, hurt, trauma, dysfunction experience, right? Even those of us that were born into normal family, there was stuff there. Maybe dad is an alcoholic. Maybe mom wasn't around. Maybe dad abandoned. Maybe there was divorce. Maybe there was fighting. Maybe they were really good humans, but they just didn't have the emotional intelligence to know how to meet our needs. So two things happen. And this is a short version, Cliff Notes. The first thing that happens is we learned all sorts of strategies unconsciously to disconnect, shut down, and not feel the pain of mom and dad are fighting all the time. The pain of we have no money and this I feel so helpless. The pain of my needs aren't being met and I feel so out of control and this feels horrible. So we learn all sorts of strategies to shut down, disconnect, not feel. We suppress our feelings of helplessness, of sadness, of resentment as a way to function and survive. Before you know it, layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of unfelt feeling gets built up over time as a survival mechanism. And now our true light gets hidden underneath, and maybe we erect walls around our heart in order to keep ourselves safe so that I don't have to feel the pain. And we go through life maybe becoming very analytical, very intellectual, because it's safer to live up here than in our body. We close our hearts as a survival strategy. And now we go into life as 20, 30-year-olds and wonder, why is it so hard to have a relationship? Because my heart is closed. And why is it closed? Because I was hurt. And I never want to get hurt ever again like that. Like my dad hurt me, like my mom hurt me when I was left. So I'm not going to give anyone an opportunity to hurt me again. So I walk around with my heart closed. That holding on is ego, right? The job of the ego, twofold: to protect you from getting hurt and to reinforce its existence. So then we, as young children, we go into the world and we become who we think we need to be in order to get love, validation, approval. Oh, dad loves me when I get all A's. Okay, let me study harder. When I laugh and I joke and I'm funny, mommy loves me. So we end up becoming who we think we need to be in order to get love, validation, and approval. And we develop a role, a mask, a persona. And we identify and attach this role, mask, and persona. And this becomes our sense of identity. That holding on, that identification, that attachment is ego. And that's who we believe ourselves to be. But all I'm saying is, what if who you think you are is not who you really are? It's just a construct of what you've been conditioned to be. So the more we hold on, the more we're conditioned, the less we're free. The more we're in ego, the more surrender scares us, because to question ourselves, who am I? What do I believe? Is this true? Maybe I'm not that. That's scary for us because the ego feels like, oh my God, everything I've known about myself, everything I believed about myself, maybe it's not true that I'm not enough. Maybe it's not true that I'm unworthy of love, but that's all I've known. So we often hold on to ego and don't surrender as a self-protective mechanism because it's comfortable. It's the known. It's who we think we are. And so we have to just kind of understand that the ego doesn't want to change. The ego does not want to change. It wants to stay the same, and it wants everyone else to change, but it doesn't want to change. Ego wants the president to change, the mayor to change, your neighbors to change. Ego doesn't want to change because it wants to stay the same. So if we can understand that, oh, I am not the ego. Oh, I'm not the ego. It's not who I really am. It's just what I've become. And it is an evolving energy. It's not a permanent structure of my entire self. What I really am is beyond that. Is consciousness, is energy, is, and that's a whole deeper conversation. But when we realize that the ego structure is not who we really are, then it opens up a deeper possibility to surrender so that we can be open to finding out, oh, if I'm not that, and I'm not that, and I'm not that, then who am I? And part of the process of surrender is the willingness to let go. You cannot manifest. You talked about, well, what would you get out of the show? What would you get out of surrender? You cannot manifest the next level of your life being the old version of yourself. The next level of your life requires the next level of you, and the next level of you requires that you let go of who you've been. You let go of what was. You let go of what you thought was. Because when you hold on to who you've been, you simply block the next level of manifestation. So if you want to manifest more, you have to become more. You have to become the next version of yourself. And that is what requires you let go of the old version of yourself. And that is true surrender. And I would say, to really move into real surrender, it's a death of sorts. It's a death of an old. Like, to move into the next phase of your life, you have to die. When I got married, I had to die to the single guy version of myself, which is why we often resist it, right? We resist commitment. When I became a father, I had to die to the old and become a new. And that was a transformational inner process. And a lot of people don't realize that to truly move into real surrender, and I would say surrender is the open-hearted participation with life, where you can throw your arms open to whatever is happening in life, right? Unconditionally, and say, let me use this, let me work with this, let me celebrate this, let me embrace what is happening and use it for my highest growth and evolution. And so to truly be able to surrender requires that you let go. And if you're really surrendering, it requires that you grieve. Grieving is a key component of surrender that 99% of people miss. They want to go into like, I'm going to be surrendered. Yeah, but why am I not? Right? Because they don't go through the process of grieving. They might even accept, okay, it is what it is, but why am I not truly open? Why am I not truly available? It is what it is. I mean, and accept it, because the phase of grieving, which is to allow yourself to feel, which is to allow yourself to let go, which is to allow yourself to process through the feeling of death and release and let go. You have to grieve the old to embrace the new. You have to grieve leaving high school to, it's bittersweet to grieve leaving high school to go to university. You have to grieve the end of a relationship to be able to open your heart again, to enter the new. You have to grieve a stage of your youth to be able to embrace moving into another phase of your life. Some people never allow themselves to grieve. So when they're 50 and 60 and 70, they're still attached to being 20, right? And they don't truly access the wisdom of that phase of their life. And so grieving is a key component in surrender that most people miss.
Well, Kute, I got to say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing these profound insights and experiences with us here today. Your perspective on surrender offers a refreshing and empowering approach to personal growth that is not something that normal people are thinking of. So thank you for sharing that. And, hey, if the listeners wanted to get in contact with you or to learn more about you,
yes,
what would be the best way for them to do that?
Look, a couple of ways. I'm always on social media. So I would say follow me on Instagram, Kute Blackson. My book, The Magic of Surrender, check it out. I wrote it from my heart in the most simple way possible. So it's a powerful breakdown of all of the ideas we shared in much more depth. I'm doing many live retreats and seminars around the world. So I would say go to my website, www.kuteblackson.com. Get on my email list. We have a free video training series on how to find your purpose that you can access for free. So kuteblackson.com. and come meet me at one of my events. I do retreats all around the world, from Bali to India. And so make sure you go to the website and check it out. And I'm sure there'll be more links also in the show notes.
Very good. And to our listeners, if you're interested in diving deeper into Kute's work, be sure to check out his books, You.Are.The.One and The Magic of Surrender. Again, you can learn more about Kute by going to his website and his transformational programs on the website. And remember, embracing surrender isn't about giving up. It's about opening up to the limitless possibilities that life has to offer for you. Until next time, keep making every day count.